Nobles are completely overpowered in EU5 1.1, with income from lack of control being a major source for all of your estates. And you can build an entire economy just off of them. Just have a look at this tax base in only 1454, and we're definitely reaping the dividends. And we've totally curtailed our nobles' power, with less power than our clergy, our burghers, and especially our crown estate. Which is really important for this type of build, because our crown power gives us some incredible buffs, and low nobles' power increases the amount we can tax them. Which obviously, if you want to make some money out of it, is quite important. But to tax them effectively, you also need high satisfaction, and we're quickly on our way to doing that. There's still a lot more we can do, with some especially heavy work on our values. Getting the right ones for this sort of strategy is really important, especially spiritualist and aristocracy for those extra nobles and really good demands. So, come on then, let's go and learn it together. So we've arrived in 1337, the Kingdom of Hungary, a perfect opportunity for a nobles-based economy. A country that can benefit from really strong RGOs, high crown power, and some unique government actions too. A perfect breeding ground for our strategy. So we need to pick our starting estate privileges, and we're doing this for two main reasons. One, to push the values that we need to be working on, and two, to dilute our nobles' power. Getting them as low a power as possible early game is imperative, and as high a crown power as possible, so that we can tax them and have them at a high satisfaction, so we can keep them loyal whilst we tax them. So now's a good segue to talk a little bit about the theory and the values that we need to maximise to get the most out of our noble economy. Firstly, Hungary can be one big blob, so we've gone centralise to maximise our proximity and how much control we get over our provinces, and more importantly, our crown power, so we can tax our nobles more. We've also gone spiritualist to maximise the amount of clerics we've got in our nation to dilute our nobles' power. Aristocracy to give us as many nobles as possible so we can tax them loads and get a lot of money out of them. Serfdom to maximise our noble estate satisfaction equilibrium so we can tax them more without penalties, but also our raw materials output because we've got some insane RGOs. Land for obvious reasons, we're not really a naval power. And more importantly, traditional economy we've stuck with, rather than going capital economy, which could be the meta at the moment. And this is purely because our RGOs are just so good, and that population capacity is really good for growing our population. When you have something stupid like 5 gold provinces, 4 silver provinces, gems, fur, copper, even saffron and dyes, it makes traditional economy really worth it. So countries like Hungary or Bohemia can really use it. Now, back into action. It's only a minor effect, but we're also cutting our thoughts on game start to reduce our nobles' power. Each castle increases your provincial noble power by 100%. It's minor, but it's still worth doing, and you save some money at the time as well. And now we need to set up our cabinet. We have to be really careful here not to hire any members of the nobility, as that would buff their noble power, and instead, we're going to hire as many crown estate people as we can, particularly making one head of the cabinet for that gigantic crown power buff. But as we don't have an eligible member of our crown estate just yet, we'll make our second cabinet minister a hired courtier for really good stats and a member of the burghers to buff their power up a bit and drown out the nobility. And because of the amazing RGOs we've got and the potential buffs to them that we're working on, we're really going to focus on these early game and get people into them, even at the cost of peasant enfranchisement. To fill these RGOs in the early game, we're going to need free mobility for the common people to allow our labourers to migrate around our country and fill these jobs. However, this does obviously add 10% peasant enfranchisement, which is quite a big debuff for the strategy we're going down. However, it's worth it. If you didn't know, enfranchisement is the proportion of a location's income that goes to your peasantry, so the higher this value is, the less money that your nobles are getting. Inversely, if you reduce their enfranchisement, you're putting more money back into your nobles, which for this strategy we can then tax quite highly. So we want to stack these reduction in enfranchisement buffs as much as possible. And Hungary also has a little bit of unique flavour too, with our king having absolute rule, allowing us an extra cabinet seat and a little bit of legislative efficiency at the cost of a little bit of noble satisfaction. Now, this might push us into a little bit of a crisis with our noble satisfaction already critically low, but I think it's absolutely worth it. Cabinet seats are insanely valuable. And we can give a really useful privilege in nobility-controlled serfdom to push up our nobility loyalty by 15%. This will increase their satisfaction and push us further into serfdom, increasing the amount of money we can get out of our provinces. As I'm sure you know, income is really important in the early game. We need to maximise how much gold we have coming in, so we can use it to grow our economy, build some amazing RGOs, and some core buildings to balance out our market. So I've cut our expenditure as much as possible, and increased our income as well, even with some minting, so we can get this early capital. We've used some of this to hire our third cabinet member, and we're encouraging communalism early to reduce the cost it's going to take us to revoke any privileges from our nobility, so we can reduce their influence as fast as possible. Likewise, we're going to make a Sarge entry to get the early game crown power buff and some early game manpower, so we can make an army, stick our ruler on it, and get some crown power through that as well. And our early game economy build has been maximising the RGOs in our nation, especially the really good ones. This is because we're taxing our nobles to hell and high water, and they get money now due to RGOs that aren't even in our control, so we can upgrade them regardless of control, regardless of proximity, just for the monetary value that they give to our economy. So as we've now hit our cap for communalism, we're going to use our other cabinet minister effectively, and we're going to encourage migration to our really good gold province. So our first parliament has now arrived, and we're going to go for the bolster the government parliamentary issue, allowing us to get free legitimacy, saving us money down the line, and bolster our crown power at the same time. We can't just focus entirely on our nobility though. We have to cover the basics, and proximity is really important to work on in the early game. So we're going to spam a few bridges out. Now, ever since proximity cost became proximity speed, this is even more important, as it scales slightly better in the early game, but tails off in the late game in terms of its effectiveness. For our early game economy, we can't just focus on RGOs, we need a specialised and balanced economy too. And with our huge surplus of gold and silver, making lots of jewellery is going to be highly efficient for us, and very profitable too. And we've just pulled back on our minting to not get our inflation too high, so it doesn't cause us too many issues as our income balloons. And because of this gigantic surplus in essential minerals, we're going to go to the unlimited export policy, allowing us to sell our gold and silver around the globe and make an absolute ton off it. And if we're going to expand our trade capacity to do this, we're going to ensure our market is balanced as well. So we're going to invest in some fine cloth and some other essential buildings. And you obviously get more money from your trade income with the higher crown power that you've got. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a small regiment, sort of some camp followers, only 50 manpower, to put our ruler on there so we can get the command bonus for our crown power. This is gigantic and really important. It will also push us to land, which is a really strong value for our situation. But predominantly, our focus on really good RGOs continues, with this insane gold mine with a 20% production modifier, and some other high value RGOs, untapped, that we're going to use up. And jumping forward a bit, this focus on RGOs and economic stabilisation is going quite well. We've got a really solid income, it's almost double what it was beforehand in only a few years. And because our estates now get insane money from out of control provinces, we can also expand into other countries, and the reaps of their labour will go into our nobility pot, pushing more money into taxable income and making us even richer. And we're lucky enough to get a really strong parliament conducting a census as our secondary one, and it will give us the rare chance to shape our government and change a law. And we need to be really careful here to pick the right ones for our noble economy, as we have to maximise their satisfaction, maximise their tax rate, and curtail their power. And that's why we went favour the elites, to increase their maximum tax rate, increase their agenda impact, so we can change our constitution faster and get us some decent buffs through aristocracy. And unfortunately, the Black Death has hit us, which is a blessing and a curse, because it allows us to push ourselves down communalism very far, which is very good for curtailing our nobles. It can also wipe out a lot of these populations, giving us some easy times to revoke their privileges. But obviously, it will completely decimate our population and destroy our economy in the short term. But even during the Black Death, as our economy is now stabilised, it's a perfect opportunity to start building some demand buildings. Now the logic behind this is, we don't need to artificially increase supply, we create demand, which allows our buildings to sell things to our own population and increase our economic base with that. If you want to learn more about that, check the video in the top right. I also have to recommend the use of bailiffs in our really strong RGOs. They give us max control in really high value provinces, but more importantly for our strategy, they've reduced the peasant enfranchisement of these locations, meaning more money goes straight into the coffers of our nobility. So we survived the Black Death by just ignoring it a bit, segregating our core and our people, and we need to rebuild our economy ASAP. So what we're going to do is mass expand all of our good RGOs, even in low control provinces, to increase that migration attraction and refill their jobs quickly. Our next parliament has now arrived as well, and we're going to use this opportunity to push central council to get us further into aristocracy to undertake more of those buffs. After a few years of building our economy and spamming RGOs, we need to start thinking about curtailing our nobles, and taking a big stab here is on the cards. Military fiefs increases their influence and reduces the amount we can tax them, so even if it's expensive, it's worth getting rid of ASAP. And it's gone. But whilst it doesn't show at the moment, with our income being low due to our stability, we're still making great strides with our economy, with our tax base rebounding after the Black Death to 330, and it's only going to be exponential growth from here on out. Now, because our economy is in a healthy state, we can upgrade all of it at the same time, whether it's our proximity through bridges and roads, our RGOs, our base buildings, or our demand buildings like marketplaces and libraries. We can all do this and it all goes into the same growth pot. So because we're in such a good state, our values are going to quickly become the most important thing to us, and innovative is the first one we need to focus on, as it buffs our max literacy, which takes a long time to grow, and it will do over the course of the game. So if we get it done early, we give it that time to develop. We've also ended up in just a little bit of debt, so we're going to mint pretty heavily to get out of it as soon as possible, because you don't want it to be stuck there, spiralling and spiralling, taking a hell of a lot of money out of your budget. But we will of course be heavily grateful to the balance the budget gods at the same time, without any real inflationary pain, and cut down our debt at the same time. It's a single best parliamentary issue in the entire game. And now we're going to develop our scriptoriums to finish off our economic spiral, and grow that demand for our entire economy, from paper to books. And we're not doing too shabby anyway. And don't forget, you're going to be constructing a hell of a lot more, so keep up with your masons, and subsidise them to keep up with demand. Don't you worry, I'm sure we'll be using them. Let's recap on our estates quickly, and our crown power is doing well, up to about 36%, giving us some sizable buffs, and our noble power is at about 25%, eliminating their debuffs, and moving us towards increasing their max tax. And look, there's no point me showing you the same videos of spamming RGAs, because I think we all understand how to do that. But this is the bailiffs I'm building, and there's a reason behind these locations, because they're my high value RGOs, and that enfranchisement, regardless of control, takes loads of money out of the peasantry into our nobility. It's also important to remember, you can only get a certain amount of bailiffs corresponding to how many urbanised locations you have. So if you want more bailiffs, you need more towns and cities. But to be honest, that doesn't sound too bad to me either. But before we get into that more expensive form of internal demand, we need to finish what we've got at the moment, and maximise the amount of temples and libraries we have. To push demand for our entire economy is paramount. Just remember to build the input goods buildings for this as well, otherwise you'll be caught short. And don't worry, it's going. And exactly the same logic with temples, and paper for the books the scriptorians need. We've unlocked a new government reform, and this is really useful for us. And what we're going to go for is the Royal Decree, which buffs our crown power and starts pushing us to centralisation, which is really good on Hungary, and especially for a nobles build. And as you can see here, we're continuing to upgrade every single form of our economy at the same time, for that robust development and consistent economic growth. We're not just causing ourselves Dutch disease and focusing on one thing. Jumping forward a bit, we're going to push down strict censorship to push us into spiritualists, to get more clerics to dilute that noble power. And we've finally unlocked armories, so we can create some demand for our entire economy with these amazing military buildings. I think the figure is about 80% of the cost of these buildings that you get back just through economic goods. And look, we're starting to reap the rewards of our labour, with our tax base nearing 700 and our balance at 220. And the main reason for this is our nobility tax rate. We're getting 155 just from them. And as you can see, this estate as a whole is pretty minted with 18 grand in the bank and 580 income. But there's a big modifier that we need to deal with, which is the supporting rebels from low control modifier, taking 233 ducats just out of circulation from our nobles economy, which is humongous. And it's an entirely flawed system in EU5 at the moment. Whereas if you have one rebellion in your entire country, they just take this flat amount from you, which scales with your tax base. If you had 15 rebellions, you'd be paying the exact same. It doesn't make sense. And it's directly correlated to unintegrated provinces too, as their pop satisfaction is much lower, which causes rebellions. So to get rid of this debuff, you can always release someone as a vassal, or just integrate the province. For our education of the elites policy, we're actually going to go for education of the court, to min-max our nobles literacy. As we spam towns and cities later on, we're going to have a lot of nobles. to increase our cabinet efficiency and to push us even further to aristocracy, getting those economic buffs early. And when you have the money, pave the shit out of your country as soon as possible. Get that income into your control, more money flowing directly into your coffers, it's really worth it. Just make sure you wait until after the Black Death, because roads directly spread the plague. As we spam some more out of our best industry and jewellery, our market's value is going up significantly. We need to keep growing this, as this goes directly into our economy, and our crown's pockets with our high crown power. Without trying to be too repetitive, we're also spamming a hell of a lot of universities for those internal demands and the really good buffs they give. Now, land rights can be quite a controversial pick for a nobles build, but I like it that they expand my RGOs for me in the early game, buffing their wealth and my country's wealth. But it can cause you to be competitive with your population from around the rest of your country. So we're going to revoke this, reduce their power and get them curtailed. We've also got the rights of the nobility law to choose, which gives us some interesting options. For your sort of game, it's going to be very, very situational to what you've got going on. You could go nobility electorate to get the most amount of satisfaction possible, or curtail them to increase your tax rate and reduce their power if you've got the satisfaction for it, or go for a bit of a mediocre option between the two. You've got loads of options, but for us, we're actually going to go for this mediocre rural noble authority option, as it does increase their power a bit, increases their satisfaction so we can tax them more, but more importantly, it pushes us towards serfdom, which is such a strong value for us. We're also going to go mandatory impressment, even as a landlocked country, to propagate the serfdom more, just for those buffs, and we're going to keep developing all sides of our economy. There must be balance in the force. But the biggest thing, as we're building our economy, is we need to get that noble's power down. So we're going to try and dilute it with counting houses, increasing our crown power, and by making some clergy buildings, as by creating more clergy jobs, we create more clergymen, which then dilutes the amount of nobles in our country. We obviously need to keep our marketplaces topped up too, with the amount of really good goods we've got to export around the world. So we're spamming them out, just a little bit, nothing crazy. But it's having a really good effect on our economy, as each of these have a unique demand that goes straight back into the pool. Everything applies. But you can see, all the economic work we're doing is pushing so much money into our nobility, which need to reclaim it. So we need to keep building all of our unique buildings, and fundamentally making a load of towns so we can do this. Not cities yet, just towns, so we can spam libraries, universities, marketplaces, counting houses, armories. All of these unique buildings push so much demand for our economy, and we can make so much money off them. As you can see, we're getting unique buildings and control everywhere we can. And the perfect example is here. Just have a look at how many towns we're making. It's really worth it, as we get extra nobles and clergy from it as well, pushing more demand into our economy. And obviously, once you've got the money for it and the disposable income, get some cities near your capital as well. They're really strong. So we're just going to jump to the end actually. I don't want to keep boring you with endless theory. As you can see, the save is going really, really well, with an income of 550 ducats, pretty much entirely coming from our nobility, and we can crank it up if we really need to. Low minting, tax high in our burghers because we've invested so much in our urbanization, and a really high tax base. We're doing really, really well for ourselves. We can do this because we've worked really hard on our nobility satisfaction equilibrium. Even minor stuff, such as our court language, in our language of pleading, or having an aristocratic court can be really, really useful. I do think free mobility for the common people is a necessary evil in this scenario, but you could even reduce this. In terms of maximum tax, it's pretty much just about reducing their estate power. There is stuff you can do to increase it, especially as you get later into the game, but this is the big one, curtailing your estates, and we've certainly done that. Only 15% power, with only elite council and nobility controlled serfdom, two very, very good privileges, but we could even reduce this if we needed to. We've pushed really hard into our values, staying traditional economy, even though the meta is capital economy at the moment, pushing communalism, land, serfdom, aristocracy, spiritualist, innovative and centralisation, all allowing us to get a really strong integrated country, a really, really strong economy, and a high population of really good types. And pretty much all funded for our crown power. We've had to take a lot of liberties to get as much crown power as possible, as you can see on screen here. Even stuff like the universal serfdom government reform is so strong, and you need to invest in this one. But try it out, this strategy is really good. Whether it's better than the peasant economy, I'm not sure, but definitely for a nation like Hungary or France, it would be really, really good. So try it out, and if you learned something, or even got just any ideas, please consider subscribing. It really makes a huge difference. And look, I'll catch you in the next one. There's a great video on screen for you to watch now. Give it a go.